Hi everyone, Black and Making It here with Demario Jones and
Ayvaunn Penn.
bringing you a special interview with the one and only Pulitzer Prize winning, Tony Award winning, and so many other award winning Michael R. Jackson. Michael, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with us. We can't wait to share your story with our audience. Let's get started.
So first things first, again, congrats on all of your awards. You've got like 15, at least 15 are listed on your website right now for your Broadway show, A Strange Loop. And among those, the Pulitzer Prize for Drama. 2 Tonys, all right. The Tony Award for Best Musical and Best Book of a Musical. When you first started working on this show 20 years ago, did you imagine yourself here in this place?
I definitely did not. It was not even remotely on my vision board.
Michael, when did you first discover your love for writing and music?
I've loved music for as long as I can remember. I grew up playing piano since I was 8 years old, and I played for my church and I played for myself. And I started writing, probably as early as 11, I kept a journal. I wrote short stories, I wrote fiction, and I was very, I loved to read, and so I was very literary as a kid, or as literary as a kid could be, and I just kept, pursuing it as I got older and went into high school.
That's amazing. So you earned your BFA and MFA at NYU in playwriting and musical theater writing. Was your family supportive of you being a creative and choosing theater not only for your studies, but for your life?
They were. I don't think they knew exactly what I would do with it or how it would play out, but they were very, very supportive.
And what did that mean to you, having that support from your family?
It was great. I mean, it meant that it was like one less hurdle to deal with as I was trying to make a way out of no way. And just knowing that they weren't like, get a real job or do this other thing. Like they never, I mean, I did do other things to support myself, but they knew that my passion was as an artist.
As we see a boom in Black content creators, not only in theater, but also in television and film, more and more Black people are interested in entering the world of creative content creation. There are mixed perspectives on if formal training or attending school for the arts is necessary for success in the arts. What is your view?
Well, my first view is that I sort of categorically did not identify as a content creator. I identify as an artist, which for me is different. I don't think that one necessarily needs to go to school for training in it, but I do think that it can help. Whether that's, whether you pay for school to do that or whether you find a community of artists who give you feedback and help you, as you're trying to get work up, I think that it can be helpful just to constantly get feedback on your work and perspective as you write and rewrite and write and rewrite, which is certainly something that I had in addition to working, learning my craft as a theater writer and musical theater writer, specifically in school.
In general, what value does art education, especially theater, hold for the Black community?
Well, I think that there's been a long tradition of Black artists making work, whether as novelists or essayists or poets, dancers, actors, like it's a long tradition. And I think that, telling our stories, has been an important way of us sort of surviving and existing in a culture that was not always supportive, or that is not always supportive of us. And it's a way of I think keeping communities together and sharing information and feelings and stories and growing as a people.
I couldn't agree with you more. I feel especially in the Black community, any community, but especially as there are some live attempts to kind of erase the truth of history, that art is a really important gateway for helping to preserve our narratives and what the truth of the goings on in our world as a community. So I love that in your success that you are remaining very true and open and honest about some of the struggles that it took to get to where you are today. And as a theater educator, I encourage my students, but I also make sure to keep it real about how tough that this industry can be. So I really identified with reading about you talking about graduating from NYU with your playwriting degree and then going, oh, what do I do now? I went to school around the corner at Columbia. So yeah, me and my classmates went through the same thing, that you graduate, and when you go to these, this cluster of schools in NYC that many of our greats come out of, that you get that pressure when you graduate of, oh, what are they going to do now? So again, taking it back to what I identified with that moment for you. For anyone else who might be in that phase in their life right now, fresh graduate, their degree in playwriting, directing, art, theater in general, and finding their footing, what advice do you have for them? What did that look like for you? And what advice do you have for people in that position now?
I have a couple of different kinds of advice. Well, one piece of advice is very practical, which is save your money. Almost 100% of being an artist is about figuring out how to do it while not having stable income, unless you come from a wealthy background. And so I always just sort of tell people I love art more than I hate capitalism. And so for me, it was always about how do I make this work for myself, because I did not have a real plan B. And so 100% of my, or a big part of my success is that I figured that out with myself, that was true. And then I did whatever I had to do to support my art while I was doing it. And then the other piece of advice that I would give, and I always give artists, is there's this quote that was made, many, many years ago about this actress named Jane Wyman, who said, there's nothing that can replace quality in entertainment, in art. There's nothing that can replace quality. And the quality is within you. Never settle for anything less than the best you know how to do. Never settle, just do your best. Because we live in such a product-oriented, time with, people wanting to sort of rush things out to the marketplace, the quality control often gets lost. And I think in art that it's important to bring it back to making sure that whatever you're putting out there is the greatest thing that it can be. And only you can determine what that is. But I do think taking your time is a valuable thing. And certainly my story with Getting a Strange Loop Up is a unique outlier in many ways. I don't think it takes most people almost 2 decades to make one piece of art, but in my case, that's essentially what it took. And that time was important for that piece of art. And I had to make peace with that it was a long journey for me. And so I just think every young artist needs to think about, what am I actually trying to say here? And what am I trying to do? And am I giving myself enough time to make sure that it's the best thing I can make it be?
That is speaking to me right now. Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. And in your timeline of life, we're at the point in time where you've gotten the seedlings of a strange loop planted. I understand that wasn't always the title, but for now we'll go with that.
Sure.
And you're working towards getting the musical produced. And in a piece that Vulture did on you called A Strange 20-Year Loop to Broadway, you talk about the dark time that you were stuck in the infamous workshop hell. So for our viewers who may not be familiar with what workshopping is for many productions before they hit a full production. They go through a workshopping process of readings, revisions, rewrites, more readings to get the piece to where it needs to be. So workshop hell, and feeling like nothing was working. You talked about having negative thoughts bombarding you from every direction, and you even considered throwing in a towel on a strange loop. But that Stephen Brackett, the director of the show, encouraged you not to give up. I'd love for you to speak on three things, and we'll start with this one here. How did you find the strength to persevere and continue believing in and fighting for your show?
So one thing I just need to sort of put a note about that timeline is that last point that you sort of raised was one that I sort of dispute with, and I disputed with the vulture, with those people, but something got lost in translation. So I would not ever characterize, I wouldn't say that I ever necessarily wanted to throw in the towel on a strange loop specifically. What I would say is that there were definitely moments when I was not certain how to write it or how to finish it or how to move forward in it. I don't think I would necessarily even say that my frustration with like the industry or anything had anything to do with it, because at those moments, there was no one was paying any attention to my piece. It wasn't like I like was almost here or there with it. I was just like trying to make it like as a just one piece of art. And so, you know, I think that like if there was any throwing in the towel, it was just like, I don't know how to write this. And so I can't remember the rest of your question. Sorry.
Oh, just how part A, how you found the strength to persevere and continue fighting for the piece.
So one thing that was helpful was that I, when we were in school, I studied Kirsten Childs' musical, The Bubbly Black Girl Sheds Her Chameleon Skin a little bit. We did a little taste of studying that. And then I asked Kirsten at some point after that, if for permission to go watch a recording of it at the New York Public Library's Theater on Film and Tape Archive. And I watched the 2000 production of that musical, which Kirsten had written. And that piece is a semi-autobiographical piece about her life. And watching that, I was just so heartened to see like another Black musical theater writer who was writing book music and lyrics tell a very personal story about their life. And that gave me like a real burst of energy to continue working on A Strange Loop, because at that point I had never seen anything like it or anything that gave me any sort of touchstone for how I could work on my own piece, and Kirsten's work gave me permission to continue down the path that I sort of was a little stuck on. So seeing that one was really important. Seeing Passing Strange a couple of years later was really important, because again, seeing like a single artist really sort of like put it all out there in a personal way was very important for me. And so it was that. And also I got little opportunities to share some of my music, little scenes, all of this, and people were largely very supportive and like encouraging me to keep going further. And so those were all things that were like very important for me along the way. Certainly winning the Jonathan Larson grant in 2017 was a real big boost, because that was like the first major award that I had won, and it was for A Strange Loop. And that sort of began like there was already a little bit of momentum behind it, but that only kicked it further into view as far as the industry goes.
Yes. Okay. And really important for in life period, but especially for artists. Can you speak to the importance of having a supportive circle and being selective about the people you surround yourself with?
Yeah, it's very, very important, you know, and I learned that lesson early just on the music side. I remember I did a concert in 2010 at Joe's Pub in New York City called So Fucking Gay. I did it on National Coming Out Day. And it was a concert that I wanted to do that sort of had a real gay perspective that was not neat and clean and angelic, and kind of dirty and raucous and all this. And I had a great difficulty putting this concert up because there were a lot of performers who were just like, oh, I can't sing that. Oh, what will they think? All this, whatever. Because it was a much different time in 2010 than it would be even 2 years later when marriage equality was passed. And so people were not always comfortable being, openly gay in their art for reasons that, I won't get into just now. And Stevens Brackett had directed that concert. And just because I had so much difficulty from it, I came away from it realizing that going forward, the only people who were allowed to do my work were people who were really down to get into it and we're not gonna have all of these, caveats and sort of walls around the kind of work they wanted to do. And I became much more selective about who I was working with after that experience. And that served me because, then working on Strange Loop, most of the cast members who were doing it on Broadway were the people who I, started to meet after that period. And they were people who stuck by me through thick and through thin, and they were fearless about the material and about standing up for me and my work. And so I kept those people very close to me. And that I think is important, especially, if you are an artist, particularly a Black artist who's out there making risky work as I was, that you have to have your tribe of folks who will stand for you, because there's going to be so many people who are going to throw tomatoes and poison darts at you. And they're going to try to discourage you and tell you, oh, it's not commercial enough, and it's not this or it's not that. And ain't nobody got time for that. I certainly didn't. That concert was like a Lord have mercy trying to get that up. And I just wanted to go forward and be able to make my work in relative peace.
Well, that's the perfect segue into our next question. And yes.
Adam Greenfield of Playwrights Horizon says, of A Strange Loop, the strength is that you see the play and say, I've never seen anything like this. But that's also what makes it harder for works like A Strange Loop to find their home. Theater's an old dog. It's often hard to teach new tricks. First, thank you for helping to teach theater new tricks. I, for one, thank you, and I'm sure the whole theater community thanks you. Second, what do you think is the secret to teaching Broadway new tricks?
For me, the trick is I have to understand that you have to bring the audience along with you, that they are a collaborator as well. And that was something that when we went to Playwrights Horizons, that I really sort of clicked into early, was that I wanted to connect with the people because I felt that the musical was a people's piece. And so therefore all the storytelling and the marketing, the ways that we approach the audience, the way that I accepted that the audience would not necessarily be all Black, and that was not only okay, that was necessary, that it had to be across racial, cross class, as much as possible, like as much mixing of everybody together, while at the same time centering a Black perspective and characters and story, that trusting that the audience could accept that, and that we were inviting them in like with open arms. That really was like the most important piece about, I think, teaching the audience, teaching the theater new tricks, is that you don't necessarily, you can be both, you can retain your integrity and be inclusive. And that inclusion actually means everyone, regardless of, who they are, because you can't control who's going to walk in those doors. People are going to pay their money, they're going to see the show, and they're going to feel however they feel about it. And I had to be open that anyone could walk through the door and that the show could be for them.
Also, what do you think the secret to breaking in new and perhaps unconventional works is, since comparatively speaking, you see more adaptations of existing films, books, and TV shows on Broadway than new original works like your own?
It's tough. I guess my question to you would be: are you talking specifically about Broadway, off-Broadway, theater in general? Because I think that it's kind of different answers to all of those in a way. Because Broadway is, for example, it's just a very commercial space, and it's about, and it's about real estate, and it's about money. Like, it's a lot of money. Like, it costs so much money to put shows up and to pay everyone and to pay the rent and to pay for the advertising and to pay for all the stuff, and there's all these union rules, and there's just so many things that make it so very expensive that, the producers and the theater owners and so forth, they can often be quite risk averse. So, I think one part of it is just having something that's undeniably great. And that again goes back to this quality thing, is that it has like to really be great. Because when things are really, really, really great, that attracts people to see it and want to see it, and on a demand. And that's one part of it. I mean, then there's other political things that are sometimes harder to navigate, but then that's where, having a great producer and producers involved and getting all the right people. And Barbra Streisand has this great lyric that was rewritten on her Broadway album that I think Sondheim rewrote the lyric for her from putting it together. There's a lyric where she goes, "You have to learn to play the politician like you play piano, bass, and drums." And to me, that lyric always like really speaks to the truth of it, is that so much of putting these shows up is about politics and playing a game, and you just have to learn it. I'm not saying that's like the best thing in the entire universe, but it's true and it can be done. And I think it can be done with integrity, but you have to work at it, which to me brings it right back to the quality. I've fought for the quality of my piece forever. And I think that doing that has helped me when it's gotten to the harder, more political aspects of trying to get the show up.
Yes, I talk with my students about that during my time at Columbia, and Anne Bogart had a visiting artists class, and Sam Gold, for folks who are watching who may not be theater nuts, Sam Gold is a Broadway director. And he talked about the fact that Broadway is what he does to pay the bills. But, when he's doing art, those, as we're talking about those riskier narratives, what would be considered riskier narratives in terms of Broadway speaking, not necessarily the sure dollar, but stories that are important to tell, that he has learned to categorize that for himself, his art space versus that more commercial space. Not to say by any means that Broadway isn't producing art.
Yeah. And that's sort of what I'm saying, is that like, that was in a weird way that was like my goal, was to prove that the two don't have to necessarily be separate. And weirdly, part of what helped me figure that out was ushering at the Lion King and Mary Poppins for 5 years, because I got to watch audiences watching a show every night, and I got to really think intimately about what it means to entertain people and and to give them something that they really want to keep coming back to. And so obviously, A Strange Loop is not The Lion King and it's not Mary Poppins, but there is an entertainment value to it that I try to keep as high as possible, so that I could sneak in, the deeper stuff. And I think that like, we had to really show the audience how to watch the show and how to enjoy it and how to, feel their way into it. And every piece is not a Strange Loop. But I do feel very much, I believe in the power of musical theater as a form. It's a populist form. It always has been. You trace it back in history to its like, you know, minstrel beginnings. It's a populist form. And I think that the power in the form is part of the key to the success, is that you just have to reach the people. And to reach the people, you have to like understand them and want them to come in and not push them away. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. Some ways are more, you know, commercial, and some ways are more artistic, or there might be a little column A, a little column B. And so I tried very hard with a Strange Loop to find ways to marry the artistic and the entertainment value.
Yes, yes. So being conscious of our time, I know we had a 30-minute window. You've already talked a lot about what it means to take your time with art. So we'll go ahead and move on to our last two questions. So Damariel, you can take it from here.
Of course. Michael, do you have any new projects on the horizon that you can tell us about?
Yes, my next musical that I'm working on that will likely move into production in the first quarter of next year is a musical called White Girl in Danger. And it's drawn from my childhood love of soap operas and Lifetime movies. And it's also this sort of an exploration or satire. It's an exploration, it's a satire, it's an allegory dealing with this question of representation and what this ongoing conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion sort of through this soap opera Lifetime movie lens. Some people might throw tomatoes at me about this piece, but I think I like it. I'm into it. I'm very, very excited, but I'm terrified about it. And I'm excited by it because it's touching, it's again, me trying to sort of marry the artistic to the sort of populist entertainment to tell a story about some things that I've been really wrestling with and thinking about over the last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, many different bands of time of thinking in this piece. And I'm excited to share it with people.
Wonderful. So as bringing us to a close, can you just give us a brief description of A Strange Loop and how folks can buy tickets and follow you on social media?
Certainly. A Strange Loop is a musical about a fat Black gay man, a young fat Black gay man named Usher, who works as an usher at a Broadway show, who is writing a musical about a fat young Black gay man named Usher, who is writing a musical who works as an usher at a Broadway show and is writing a musical about a young fat Black gay man named Usher, who works as an usher at a Broadway show ad infinitum, and sort of circling through his own self-perception and self-hatred. You can purchase tickets to Strange Loop by going to our website, strangeloopmusical.com. Again, that's strangeloopmusical.com, not strangeloopmusical.com. strangeloopmusical.com, which will take you, I believe, to Telecharge or Ticketmaster. I can't remember. I think it's Telecharge. And if you want to follow me on social media, you can find me on Instagram at The Living Michael Jackson or on Twitter at The Living MJ. I'm also on Facebook, but not as much, so I won't bother with those. And my website is thelivingmichaeljackson.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for sharing your time with the Black and Making It audience. Viewers, be sure to subscribe to blackandmakingit.tv.com for all things Black excellence in art and education. Goodbye, everyone, and we'll see you next time.